Hello everybody, Toast Bomb here. For the last 2 days I've been scouring the net, trying to pick up every little detail that we have on Destiny and compile it all into this one space, so I got a lot to talk about, so let's get right into it. Alright, so starting off, Destiny will be a class-based game. At the press event that they had at the Bungie Studios about a week ago, they talked about the Titan, which is a soldier, kind of standard gunfighter class, the Hunter, which is more sniper focused, and the Warlock, which has magic powers. They gave the example of being able to shoot a fireball out of your hand, so there will be some sort of magic powers where maybe you can shoot like ice and stuff, kind of like Skyrim potentially. Now, also at the event, they talked a lot about there not being a standard lobby system. Even though you saw this picture where it sort of looks like that, this is probably where, you know, you're kind of traveling out in space and then you're going to choose what you're going to do next, where you're going to go. So there are going to be menus, but there's not going to be a standard, like, main menu where you invite your friends, go into matchmaking, and then you do that stuff. It's going to be much more MMO-like. They even said there's going to be emotes in the game, so you can potentially slash dance, or do whatever, wave to people, high five, do that sort of stuff. But they also said that there will be no monthly fee, which is obviously common for MMOs to have a monthly fee. There will be none of that. They also said you'll be able to get different types of ships and different ships. They didn't go into explaining, like, what the use is, so there must be something attached to that, so we can assume that you're not just going to be teleporting to different planets, but there's actually going to be some reason for having different types of ships. But again, they didn't go into any of that stuff, what any of that means or what it's going to do. They also said you're going to be able to go to different planets in the solar system, like Mars, you can see here. Also, the moon was another one, and they said that there's going to be dungeons. They kept using the word dungeons, apparently, and they're kind of constantly sort of skirting around MMO terminology. Like, they used raid, they used 6-player raid at one point, but they never really said MMO, and I think maybe that's just sort of because MMO tends to kind of have a lot of weight behind it and a lot of assumptions that people have that it's just going to be like World of Warcraft or whatever, so maybe that's kind of why, but they kept skirting around that. Anyways, there will be dungeons, so like this place, this crazy looking thing, there's going to be dungeon, you fight a bad guy there. And they also said 6-player raid, so there's at least going to be 6 players, maybe that's the cap, not sure. They also said though that it's not going to be completely random. You will be able to invite your friends into a squad, so you'll have a controlled group of people. It's not going to be totally crazy and random, kind of like how Journey ended up being, where you had literally no control over who you played with. Also, they've said that there is competitive multiplayer. People are assuming that it's just going to be like, you know, in the town or whatever, where you're just hanging out doing whatever. There's going to be some door-marked arena or training grounds where you can just go in it and play regular deathmatch like you'd expect from a Bungie multiplayer game. Oh yes, and the different enemy types. There are time-traveling robots. That sounds pretty cool. There's like these spider dudes, there's a bunch of different things. Also, they confirmed the rumors that Paul McCartney is working on the music in collaboration with Marty on this game. So that's pretty crazy. I don't know. Sounds pretty interesting, I guess. Kind of odd though. But anyways, they also said they recorded a lot of the music very, very early on. Like, that was one of the first things they did, was record music for this game, almost to use kind of like what concept art is for, where everyone on the team could start getting a general idea of what this game is supposed to feel like, what it's supposed to look like, so they can kind of get into the mood of the game so they can start creating stuff. They used the music for this a lot. So that was kind of interesting, because a lot of times that's not really what ends up happening. Also, it's been in development for 6 years. not necessarily full-blown out development, but right after Halo 2 was finishing up, this idea of this bigger thing, that this really, really ambitious thing that they wanted to start, kind of started bubbling up, and they started talking about it and throwing ideas around. So yeah, it hasn't been in like full-blown development for 6 years, but it's been around, and the idea has been growing and developing ever since then. So that was a really interesting thing. Also, they're in this game for 10 years. They will be making Destiny games, expansions, however they end up setting that stuff up, for an entire 10 years. They also said it will be for Xbox 360 and PS3, but they did not mention PC. It's kind of like one of those things, maybe in the future if it sort of works out, but they're not necessarily expecting it to be on PC at this time, but I guarantee you it will be on next generation consoles. It's kind of a weird time right now for that sort of stuff because developers aren't able or allowed to announce that they have dev kits and are working on next generation games, but they are. They absolutely 100% are. They have the dev kits, they're working on games for it, so I'm sure a next generation Destiny title is in development. They just can't talk about it right now. They also say customize and upgrade every part of how you look and fight with an almost limitless amount of armor, weapons, and visual customization. So, when I said in the previous video where I was like, man, I don't know how much they're going in customization because a lot of games advertise that and then it really ends up not being a really huge thing, they really seem to be going in that direction. Which I think is kind of interesting, although they do say that all this stuff will be used in every single mode: the story, the competitive multiplayer, and the public combat destinations. Which that seems kind of weird, especially if it's kind of Borderlands-y. We don't really know, but if it is, where it's sort of randomly generated loot, that seems really weird, because it's like, oh, I got really lucky and I got this insane assault rifle, and now I just beat everybody in the competitive multiplayer because I got lucky. That doesn't really seem fair, so I'm wondering how that is gonna work with the weapons, but obviously we'll have to wait and see. Now, they also said that the whole town, city area where you won't be fighting, but you'll just be hanging out with people, refueling, buying ammo, selling weapons, or whatever, will be in third person. I assume this is probably because they're really going into the visual customization of your dude, your armor, stuff like that, and you want to be able to show that off, and you want to be able to see yourself, because obviously, in first-person shooters, you don't really see your armor that much unless you're dead, and you see your dead body flying around. So that's kind of cool thing to, make that stuff, give yourself a little more of a reward for getting that awesome helmet. You actually get to see it on your guy, which is cool. They also apparently kept using the word exotic weapons. So people aren't really sure, is that kind of like in Borderlands again, where you have like these named weapons that are the special ones, and then there's these generic weapons that aren't really worth anything, you just sort of want the named ones. They're not really sure if that's how it's gonna work, but they didn't mention anything that wasn't exotic. So people are sort of unclear about that, but yeah, I'm not sure. I'm going to assume it's something like Borderlands, but again, we have no way of knowing now. One of the things, though, that's really interesting about their development sort of design philosophy around this game and what they want to happen is for you to have a story behind every piece of armor you have, and have that be a lot of the story, not just the core kind of storyline that they have going on, but have this thing where it's like, yeah, man, I remember when I got that helmet, me and my friend and his friend were here and we were like doing this thing and we fought this dude and I got the helmet and it was super awesome, and having personal connections to these different pieces of armor is really what they're shooting for, and that seems really interesting, although that means that you're going to need to have a ton of different types of armor and stuff like that for that to be meaningful. And also the thing I'm thinking is maybe this armor is only going to be cosmetic, because otherwise you just run into people just running the top tier armor because it's the best armor and not because it necessarily is the best looking armor. So I'm wondering how that stuff is going to work, but I gotta assume it's gonna be mostly cosmetic. I'm not really sure. Let's see on my notes. Yes, okay. They also confirmed the rumor that the project was once called Tiger at one point. Not really a huge thing, but it was. Also, this is a pretty cool, interesting thing that we really don't see on consoles very often at all. If you were a fan of Halo 2 clans, you will love this. There will be guilds in this Destiny game. Basically, a guild is like a group of people that are all in this one community. They can invite each other. It's kind of like an extended friends list, but it's just for that game. So, you know, you could have the Toast Bomb Guild where everybody, you know, that would be cool. You know, that's sort of the potential thing that could happen there. So that is really interesting. I love the clans from Halo 2. Super awesome idea, even though it's just used as kind of an extended friends list. It's for that specific game, and it was just a really cool idea, and I thought that was awesome. So I'm glad a system like this is being implemented into this game. They also said that all their worlds and stuff like that are built from prefab parts. So, you know, you're not going to have this 100% necessarily unique world. They're going to have, oh, this piece of ground and this crate. People were saying that the prefab parts were really small, so you're not going to run into the issue of some games that use this, where it's just kind of like, oh, it's this building and it has like one box that's moved in a different location and everything's blue instead of red. It's not necessarily going to have that problem because the parts are very small, but it kind of allows them to build the worlds sort of like Legos, where they're just snapping them together into different shapes instead of building all custom geometry for every single part of the game. Also, some of the people at the event were saying that it really felt like something was pulled from the event, and that when they talk to developers, and the developers are obviously like, oh, how'd you like the game, how'd you like it, and they're like, well, we kind of wish we would have seen the game, because they didn't see really any gameplay. I think they just saw the vid doc that came out, and then like some more concept art that people hadn't seen before, and that's kind of it. So, and then the developers, when they told them that, they're like, wow, really, you're not seeing the game? So they were saying it felt like because they were there for an entire day, there was a lot of breaks, they spent a ton of time talking about music and things that aren't necessarily as huge and talked about as much at these events, generally, that it seems like they were originally maybe planning on having some sort of gameplay shown, like a live demo, but maybe for whatever reason that was pulled and they just kind of had to stretch the time for whatever reason. Also, people are expecting this to not be cross-platform because obviously, as we've seen with many games, even games as huge as Call of Duty, where you think they could pull the money together, and I'm sure, I mean, they would probably like it to be cross-platform, that it's just too closed off, and the policies that Microsoft and Sony have are against that, and they won't allow it. So, unless that changes in the next generation consoles, we're probably going to see segregation points between the PS4 and Xbox 720, whatever, and also the PS3 and the 360, and then probably even between like PS3, PS4, Xbox 360, Xbox 720, because of things like the player caps for those versions of the games will probably be increased because they'll have more memory, and that's probably going to be a big selling point. So obviously, if you had an Xbox person, you're not going to be able to support the amount of players that a Destiny person could, so the math just doesn't work out, and so that's kind of unfortunate, but there probably have to be segregation points there as well. And then the last thing they said, the game plays similar to Halo, so that's sort of a confirmation thing. As you can see in this screenshot, you can see that the reticle looks very similar to the AR. So that's everything I've been able to pull off the internet on this game. I hope you liked it. Anyways, if you liked it, you can leave a like or comment, or you can subscribe because I post new Halo videos every day. Anyways, thank you for watching. See you tomorrow. Bye.